Well, what do you think about uh, following or recognizing people that could be saints, or looking on them as
Okay. Yeah.
role people that we could follow that would lead us in a better direction towards Christ?
Today, this is a discussion that's come up a little bit over the years. It's not something we have focused on, even though we're all called upon to become saints. Um, I truly believe that we have saints living among us. Uh, they may not be recognized, but that doesn't mean they're not saints. Um, and the problem that you have within the modern church is there are individuals that they've held up as saints, and some of them are not the best role models. Their measurement is different, uh, but at the same time, there have been some who probably are in heaven. They are saintly. Uh, you know, the one of the practical things that you run into is that the way in which the church, when I say the church, the Vatican, looks at sanctity, measures sanctity for the purpose of beatifying or canonizing someone, has changed dramatically. Dramatically. Those things which were required, as for example the miracles, they're no longer required. So you get a convoluted picture of, okay, who's truly holy and who's not. One that comes to mind that during her lifetime was always looked upon as a saint was Mother Teresa. Well, you look into her life and you find out that this community that she established, these sisters, her and her sisters, were not interested in converting souls at all. It was all humanitarian. And she said that if you're a Baptist, be a good Baptist. If you are a Muslim, be a good Muslim. If you're a Hindu, be a good Hindu. She wasn't interested in converting souls. That's not a saintly person. Yet the world looks upon her as a saint. And I think she's been canonized by the modern church. So, from that standpoint, people get a very confused picture of who's a saint. Do I think we have saints? We do, but I think for the most part they're hidden. Some, perhaps, there are some in small regions. They know of individuals who were saintly. But once again, in the age in which we live, people, they think of sanctity as something very different from what it was. And sanctity starts with supernatural virtue. Uh,
Yeah.
and who is the virtuous person? They're out there. They're out there. We had a discussion of this back in the 80s, 40 years ago, in the seminary years. And Bishop Lewis was always good at things like this. And we were talking about, we were looking at it from this standpoint. We looked at, very early on, we took the position that Novus Ordo is not valid, sacramentally invalid. Even today it's a radical position, but that's still our position. So if a Catholic cannot receive grace from the sacraments and from the Mass, how can they save their soul? And the answer is this: through their own personal sanctity, through their prayer life, they will be given the grace to be able to become saints. Now, there may be just a few, or maybe no one knows it, but God knows it. So, even in the midst of all this chaos, it is possible for someone to become a saint. Otherwise, you would have a situation where in our age, when I say age, let's say 2 or 3 generations. And if you want, say it's in Vatican II. It's kind of unfair to use Vatican II as a barometer here, but you know, for the sake of an argument here or discussion, you use that. Well, that would mean that after Vatican II there are no saints. And that really makes no sense, because you look back in time, some of the most difficult periods that the church has had to deal with, and you take the Protestant Revolution of the 16th century. God raised up a number of saints, a number of martyrs during that time. Do you think he's not doing the same thing today? And speaking of martyrs, I've said this for several years. Now, I can't put a name to the individuals, but how many Catholics, let's take the 20th and 21st centuries, how many Catholics died truly as martyrs during the wars, under communism, by the Muslims in different parts of the world? I am thoroughly convinced that we have perhaps more martyrs in our time than we ever have. We just don't know who they are, because they've been killed, and we may never find out who they are in this life. We'll know if we get to heaven. So in that way, I believe that God truly has raised up saints. I think there are others around. Despite the confusion and the craziness in the church, there are people who have lived a holy life. Another example that I like to use, I don't hope you don't mind me going along with this.
No, I don't mind.
I like to use the example of families, husbands and wives, who, whether it's truly a quiet life, or they live a life in such a way to where they're living the Catholic faith, and they truly they sanctify themselves through the faith, despite all of what is going on around them. And with some of these people, I have no doubt they purposely exclude the world. They keep the world at a distance. They're not interested in this. And it can be done even in this country. And think of all the different countries around the world where this is possible. I today believe that it's possible just about anywhere. But it takes the individual who truly considers their eternal salvation, and they block out all the noise of the world. Maybe there's a little bit there, but for the most part, they're living a holy life. It's a prayerful life. It's a quiet life. And with some of these people, because this is not new, maybe they have no access to Mass. And one of the things that I think about, I hope he doesn't mind me using him as an example. I only know his name. We've got a man in Latvia who listens to this program, and I'm pretty certain he streams Mass. We've got somebody else in China who streams and listens regularly. They're on the outpost. Okay? They're
Mm-hmm.
in foreign nations. The stream has become their link. You know, how many others are out there? Do I think there are a lot? I don't think so, because I can go on and look at our program and see how many people are streaming, or how many. I think I can tell even how many people uh, who are watching or listening to the program, whether live or archived. Okay, but my point is this: whether they may not have access to any technology. They purposely have excluded all technology from their life because they choose to live a quiet life. This and I was asked this question years ago. And among traditionalists, this is almost a forbidden answer, because I can remember in years past getting a response that was very different from my own. And the question was, and this goes back 40 years, Eddie, are all the people, this is the question, are all the people that know this sort of going to hell? I've never answered yes, because I don't believe that they're all going to hell. And that was really the reference that we had when we talked about this in the seminary. Despite all what has taken place in the Novus Ordo, you have Novus Ordo Catholics, some who will go to heaven, despite that fact. We don't know. We don't know. And to become judge, jury, when we're not God. We don't have the ability to look into the hearts and souls of people. We don't know. And this is uh, something that we have to think about. How many individuals who are going to go to heaven because of baptism, blood, or desire? Blood and desire. Desire is going to mean the martyrs. Okay? Pardon me, blood. Blood will be those who have died for Christ and that have not received the sacrament of baptism, but have died for Christ. Desire is a little bit more gray area. Those individuals out there who are not Catholic, who indeed will go to heaven.
Well, you know, right now in Africa, they're killing millions of Christians,
Yeah.
Catholics. And
Yeah.
I believe a lot of them are going to be martyrs, going to be saints.
Yes. Yeah, that's part of what I'm talking about, because between Africa and the Mideast, in the recent years, I mean, after U.S. military left Iraq, we left a vacuum, and the radical elements among the Muslims went in, and he started killing Christians. Some of this was on the mainstream news. They gave them a choice: either convert to Islam or die. And some of it was on film where they were cutting their heads off, right on film. This is the 21st century. And when the media describe them as Christians, when you do a little bit more research, they were Catholics. Different ones from the different churches in the East. But the fact is, if a person truly dies for Christ, they're a martyr. You know, only God knows the soul. He'll make a judgment accordingly. And this is where we have to be very, very careful about passing judgment. It's very different from I'm going to use the Protestants as an example, who they're in denial of a lot of different teachings of the church, which means they're in denial of Christ. And they die in that state. That's a much clearer case. You deny Christ, you're going to hell. I don't have to put a name on the face. In fact, it's not my responsibility to put a name on a face. I'm giving you the principle here. You die in heresy, even Catholics who die in heresy will go to hell. And then you have the case of the Muslims. They deny Christ. They always have. The only Muslim that has any hope of salvation is to convert, which means they're no longer a Muslim. And so, I just recently read this. I don't know the truth of it because it's a news item. Apparently, there are a lot of people in Turkey. There's a mass conversion to Christianity. Now, what Christianity means, I don't know if that's Protestantism or Catholicism, but there are mass conversions taking place in Turkey. I read it, I'm thinking, okay, that's better than Muslim, but where that puts them in the sight of God, I don't know. Something's going on, because if you just take bits and pieces of this and file it away, because that's kind of what I do. There are a lot of different people in different places right now. They're converted to Catholicism. And of course, I've had people say, well, Father, that's the Novus Ordo. Okay, you have to be careful here. You can't read the heart of that individual who's converted. Their intention is to become Catholic, despite the fact of the condition of the Novus Ordo. So be very, I'm very cautious at making judgments like this. I've learned as I've gotten older, because I've known people who say, well, they have thrown the Novus Ordo out, baby in bathwater, and everything. And anybody in the Novus Ordo is going to go to hell. I would never do that. I would never do that. Because you don't know the heart and soul of the individual.